Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 4 of Chuck's Truck. Today I'm going to talk about the gauges, what we did on the gauges. When I started this series of videos, I didn't want to show a lot of me working on stuff or Chuck and I working on stuff because you guys don't really want to watch me, or at least I don't like watching somebody with a grinder for, 30, 45 seconds. To me, it's pointless. I know how to do that, but so I just talk about what I do and show you what I've done. It's a lot easier that way too. I'm not trying to film while we're actually working. But I did something different on this that I don't think anybody's done yet on any of these builds. So I really wanted to show this off. I think it's kind of a neat idea. It was a lot of work, but it turned out pretty nice. And what I actually ended up doing was I took the individual gauges. There's actually 3 gauges in the cluster in my case. I don't know about the police with the tachometer. This was a Grand Marquis, so it didn't have any of the police stuff on it. But there's a center gauge, and there's a gauge on either side that you can remove separately. And I took those out, and I integrated them into the gauge panel that came with the truck from the factory. It looks a lot better. However, I lost that back part with the printed circuit board in it, so I had to wire all that up. So I spent a lot of nights out here with a soldering iron running wires across, and I also lost all the indicator lights because they were mounted in that part. So I ordered up some LED lights and some a check engine light and a bright indicator light. And I'll show you here in a minute how it all works. But it all works really well. I had found a set of gauges at the junkyard that was black, and I thought it looked a lot better. So I took the gray gauges that we had that came in the car, and I didn't even realize they even came in different colors. I just happened to get those gauges. And then when I got them home, oh wow, they're black. So I took the black gauges out of that cluster and put them into this, but I changed the odometer and everything from the original car, so I kept the same mileage. Which this car only had 60-something thousand miles on it, so that's just a drop in the bucket for these 4.6s. So this thing should run another maybe 200,000 miles, if we take care of it. So that's enough of me talking. I'll show you what I did. Okay, let's take a look and see what the gauges look like in the truck. So you can see the lighting is on, and we've mounted the knob from the car in this extension panel, which again, that's made out of an old piece of a desk. You can see the extra indicator lights that we had to add, the LEDs. When we put this in, there was very little gas in it. Matter of fact, this was actually below empty, and that light was on, so that works. The low voltage light, I guess, is working. And put the turn signal on, and that works. And we have the other one over there, and that's our check engine light. And there's another red indicator right there. I don't know if you can see it or not. But everything works pretty well. When I changed the gauges out, I took the speedometer needle off, and it was really hard to get it back on the clocked right on the right spot. Actually, what I did was driving the truck up and down the neighborhood, set it at 30 miles an hour, and I actually took the gauge off while I was driving and put it back on right on 30, because putting it on 0 did not work for some reason. It would be off by like 4 or 5 miles an hour, but it reads exactly with my phone GPS speedometer. So I think this looks pretty good. Here, let's crank the truck up. See, the oil pressure gauge popped right up, so everything's working. And then when we lock it, it turns that off. So let me know what you think. I thought this was a pretty neat way to do this. It was a lot of work, a lot of extra work, mounting the whole cluster up here in one piece would have been a lot easier, but this gave us a really good look, and I think it'll be nice when it's all said and done. So let me know what you think. All right, in the next clip, I'm going to show you the back side of the gauges, which was obviously done before this, but you can see how I made the mounts and had to do all the wiring and everything. So spent a lot of time soldering it all up, and it worked first time. Okay, I said when I started this video series that I was going to show you things I was doing that I hadn't seen anybody else do. So this is the back side of the gauges for the truck. And what I have done is I have removed the individual gauges from the cluster and made homemade mounts for them to live in the original Ford gauge plate. Let me turn it around here so you can see it. And I do have glass to go in this. There's not any in it right now, but the center mount, actually I took the original speedometer mount and modified it. I welded in this plate here, and I cut out this partial round, not really a half round hole. And I bought this trim. I'll zoom in where you can see it, this little rubber trim to cover up, because I plasma cut it. So it's kind of got a rough edge there, but the trim hides all that. And then made some little bars to clamp it in. And there's a whole ton of 1024 screws holding this in. And I had to make brackets for lights, because the lights went into the cluster back panel. Also, speaking of lights, all these and all these are indicator lights, which I lost by doing this. So I had to replace them. So I bought some little LEDs and actually drilled holes in the gauges and mounted them. Like, there's the left turn signal indicator, there's the right turn signal. This will be the check engine light, and that thing is really big and gaudy, but it is what it is now. This is a nice little bright light indicator that I found on eBay. Low fuel, low battery, high temperature, and I don't think there's a low oil pressure light that comes on. Maybe the check engine light comes on if you run out of oil pressure. What I ended up having to do was cut these out. Again, cut them out. You can see they're a little bit jagged when you zoom in on them. You can see right there's a spot. And then I cut them out and then just cleaned them up as best I could, made them as round as possible, and then I'll be covering them with glass and these covering the edges with this rubber trim that I bought again off eBay. And I'm gonna take this apart, sandblast it, and repaint it. Might carry it and have it powder coated. You can see there we kind of cut too much off of this and had to weld it back on really thin. So there's the plate right there that I welded in and mounted the gauges to it. And then I had to make all these little brackets, like I said, for the lights. I bought some LED lights and some sockets, and there ended up being 7 of them, 3 in the middle and then 2 on each side, to get it lit up. And I can actually plug it in here and show you that. I don't have any wiring for the gauges. I have gotten the speedometer working, and it does plug in and work. In the process of doing this, I actually bought another gauge pod from a junkyard that had black gauges in it. The gauges that were originally in the car were gray, and I think these black ones look a lot better. But I actually transferred the odometer from the car so it had the right miles on it to the black face gauges, because I wanted to be able to keep up with actually what this drivetrain and engine has on it. Hopefully all this work on this hasn't damaged any of these gauges. The wiring is going to pretty much be a nightmare, because basically I have to recreate all these circuit paths with individual wires. And like I said, I got it done on the speedometer. And so here's the pins that stab into this piece. And here they are on the speedometer. And as you can see, I've soldered wires. And this is a connector that I harvested from the build somewhere. And then I've got 2 of these connectors. Again, I harvested them from somewhere. I'm gonna need, and I've got the other half laying on the floor, but I've got of this one. but I've got enough of this to connect all these wires, and I'll be soldering wires onto these pins. What's going to be fun is tying in the anti-slosh module. I'll be soldering wires onto those pins where it stabbed into the circuit board before, and then wiring it in. And also I got to figure out some way to mount it so it's not just flopping around back there. Those holes are really small. I don't have any screws that small. Maybe I can just zip tie it to something. This has been an enormous amount of work, and I kind of am regretting going down this road. The appearance, I think, is going to be pretty cool. It's going to blend in really well with the inside of the truck. However, it has been and will be a lot of work. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to pause the video here, and then I'll plug this back in and show you what it looks like all lit up. So here it is in the dark, and my check engine light is picking up some light, just ambient light from the backlights that I put in. Now, as you can see, there's a large amount of light that is just naked and is going to shine down in the floorboard on the truck. So I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Also, these gauges are basically going to be open to the atmosphere, so they're going to get a lot of dust in them and whatnot. I mean, I've got glass that'll go on this side to keep stuff out from here, but as far as coming in from the back, you know, dust that'll migrate up underneath the dash, I really don't have a good way to cover it. You know, there was a reason that Ford made this, you know, this all sealed up here. Of course, I guess it did have some openings in it, so maybe it isn't that big a deal. But anyway, I guess we'll see how it works. We may have to take it apart and clean it every now and then, and we'll see. I mean, it looks good. Looks really good, actually, and I think it's going to look good in the truck. Our plan is to have the inside of the truck looking as much as we can like a 66 and as little as we can like a Crown Vic. And here you can see the gray gauge face versus the black. I think the black looks a lot better. Okay, this is the glass for the speedometer. That's the factory glass that came in the truck. And what I did to get this black on here, what I did to get this black on here was I just taped the whole thing up, and I found the center, you know, did some high school geometry, and I had a compass that I clamped a razor blade to with just a C-clamp, and I cut out a circle, and then I took a straight edge and I cut that out. And this kind of hides some of the stuff you don't want to see in there, but you can see it looked really good. That's just plain old black, you know, flat or satin black paint. And it looks pretty good. It's dusty. It's been in the shop here forever, and it's real dusty, but I've had it on there and it looks really good. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can drill a hole in it for the trip odometer button and get that working.